Welcome, Diane, to CXPA Connections. It is so great to see you again, and thank you for spending some time, not only with me, but with all of our members who are tuning in from around the world.
Of course, it's one of my favorite things to do. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the Book of Knowledge and all things CX.
That's awesome. You know, Diane, you've played so many different roles with CXPA, and you've seen so much change and so much advancement. But what really distinguishes you in my heart is the fact that you keep coming back and giving back. You find ways to be involved, and you find ways to mentor and to share and to help other people develop. And I want to begin by saying thank you for that. But secondly,
it is so my pleasure, Greg. And I tell you, I learn so much every day from practitioners. Even though I've done this for a long time, there's always something new to learn. So even those of you who think, I've done this, I'm in the lather, rinse, repeat mode, things continue to change and evolve every day. So I learn just as much from them as they do from me.
And that's awesome lead into the conversation today, because today we're going to take a little bit of a conversation deep dive into your work on the experience design section of the CXPA CX Book of Knowledge. And so this is an opportunity for the field to really set out and define what every CX professional should know about the core areas from CXPA's framework. So my question to you is what do you see as your overarching takeaways from the experience design section of the Book of Knowledge?
I think one of the best takeaways for me is for us to really try to communicate what design is and demystify or kind of debunk a little bit of what people think design is versus how it can really be leveraged, not only from an experience management profession, but also just in general for the business. One of the things that became very evident as we began to discuss design is it wasn't even just about designing the experience, but we had to really step back and think about the fact that we are using design on the entire business and the organization, from the way people worked to the technology, to the user experience design, to drafting scripts for different things, how people sell. Everything needed to be designed. And so when we started talking about experience design, people kind of have a preconceived notion of what that is and how it gets applied. And I think the surprise for all of us was really thinking about how design is everywhere. And for us, making change happen, we apply it in so many different ways.
I love that. And it makes me think about a debate I have with my wife. Whenever we go to buy something for the house, she always loves to have the beautifully designed things. And I always want to find the really functional solution.
Yes.
And, I think that the section of the Book of Knowledge and that conversation you were having is to say, we need to think about both of those factors and try to design that intermediate solution that is good for the customer, good for the business, and good for the employees.
Yeah, and I love that point, because we talked also a lot about one of the techniques that didn't make it in the book, but we tried to give examples of is, really defining success for what your design looks like. If you're going to be purposeful and intentional, you really need to have a target for where you're going with it. And that is a combination of both functional, to your point, what it can do for you, but really pulling in that emotional piece. So when we talked about human-centered design and design thinking and some of the concepts and methodologies, it really came down to being intentional about caring for both. And to your point, caring also for the customer and the business at the same time.
That's awesome. And I love, as you were talking about that, the way that you move from one theory to another, because that was one of the things that impressed me about this section of the book is that it's not just people's opinion, or it's not just examples of what worked in one place or another, but it's that whole combination. What is the theory? Where did this process come from? What are the terms? And how do we understand those elements? And so it's just a really very rich section and resource for CX professionals. I was wondering if there was one or two sections that were your favorite parts, or that you would point out to people from the experience design section?
I would, and this came a little bit, one I already talked about, and us really thinking about the different types of design, and also applying design internal to design for the business and design in the business and design with the business. So you'll see that theme kind of come into play. So that was one that resonated. Then as we were talking about the fact that, our role is to help everybody understand the different ways of their different behaviors, different ways of working, different skill sets and competencies for everyone in the organization. And one of the quotes in there is about how design really belongs to everyone. And I don't mean that in a way that everybody has the talent competencies to be a designer. That's a very specific, retail design or a UX designer. But in every sense of the word, everybody every day is making decisions to move something from one state to another. And so that purpose and intent and all the things we think about that are the guiding principles of design have to apply to everything we're doing. Whether it's, as I said, writing a script or redesigning your IVR or an AI, all of those things are a design. And so those skills and competencies really need to be adopted by everyone. And then, of course, as it gets more complex and the background, you're going to bring the experts in. But there's a lot of things you can apply from that section that apply to everything you do every day.
You mentioned about design and different ways of thinking and bringing people together. I wanted to thank you because one of the things that was really unique about this project is that this wasn't something that you did on your own. This was something that you collaborated and worked with others to really come up with those consensus insights on design. And I can hear from your comments and your conversation how much value it was to you to collaborate with others. So I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to ask, are there any insights from you or any thoughts that you want to share about the process of writing this section?
Yes, I would. I want to thank all the people who collaborated on this. We had a lot of contributors, and as with any team, there were people who contributed and then couldn't because they had commitments. But the core team really stuck together and brought it all home. So I want to thank those people. You can see them. It's Ray, Keisha, Dave, Cynthia. But one of the things that I think really began to become apparent for us is we actually relived a lot of what we do in our profession in real time. And what I mean by that is when we kind of separated, we took the topics and we separated and said, let's go write at least the first part and we'll come back together. And just the different perspectives from people's backgrounds and what they had been exposed to and their level of maturity with either design in general or a very specific topic, it really showed that talking the same language and getting this basis, which is what the Book of Knowledge is, was one of the most powerful things that we could do by bringing in all the perspectives and having conversations and saying, what do we agree to and how can we talk the same language and help others understand there are so many tentacles to this arms and legs to this design principles and design in general. But just going through that process was very educational for everyone on the team. We all talked about those different perspectives. So it really mirrored what we do in organizations by, saying these things in the organization, and everybody that is listening is interpreting it a different way. So we have to be very cognizant. As we wrote this, we had to think about how we were going to set the stage, to your point of what is this? Where did it come from? What's a wicked problem? What does that mean? Being very specific about it. So it was stepping back for a lot of us who were trying to boil the ocean and share as much as we could and really get back to how do we create a very concise way for people to think about this. So that was definitely a learning from our group.
I love that. And not just a concise way, but an authoritative consensus way, because I think that, an analogy that I always like to talk about is when the finance team comes in to present their spreadsheets and their data and their numbers, nobody asks them where they came up with accounting standards. But when we walk in and we start talking about wicked problems, people say, well, what does that mean? And now we have the book, we have the consensus that you can show and bring that up. As a matter of fact, for those that haven't seen it yet, if you walk into a meeting and you put that book on the table, all of a sudden people understand
Like,
that there is, a consensus body of knowledge, and that there is learning that happens along the way. But I am looking forward to logging back on to cxbookstore.com to be able to go on and read and look a little bit deeper, because I think it's important that we have that refresher, that we have that engagement, and we have these conversations with one another, so that we as CX professionals can bring everyone else along in our journey, because that's how we're going to really drive and affect change.
Yeah, and it's, if you think about the change that we have to lead in these organizations, one of the things that's always helpful, and I joked about this with somebody the other day. I said, I can say things 15 times, and yet when you bring somebody in from the outside and they say exactly the same thing that you said, all of a sudden the executives go, oh, wow, what epiphany. I'm like, oh, but it's just this borrowed authority that really helps them to say, okay, it's not just her making it up. There's really a science, an art and a science to this profession. And so the Book of Knowledge helps us move in that direction. And build that to say, yes, there are standards, and yes, there are frameworks, and guess what, they work. And why the reason you've created this discipline in your organization is because you seek the results of those standards and the way the frameworks are used, and all working together, they do have an impact. So that's the other benefit of the book, is you have a little bit of that on the angel on your shoulder, I call it, to talk about the fact that it's not just this fuzzy, making people feel happy, although that's a big part of it. It is a discipline in an organization.
I love that. That's so very well said. Well, turning the conversation for a minute, here we are approaching the end of the 2022 calendar year, and there's a lot going on in the world. There is political unrest. There is a lot of global migration and immigration that is happening, supply chain disruption, a lot of confusion and concern about the economic situation ahead. And amidst all of this, CX professionals are being asked to be a part of change leadership and success and planning for their organization in 2023 and beyond. So I wanted to tap into your expertise as somebody who has seen a lot of success and worked with a lot of different organizations. What are your thoughts and your advice to CX professionals as we move into 2023?
Stay the course. And help your leadership to see the bigger picture. So I'm mature enough, that means old, mature enough to remember going through the 2008 and doing this work during 2008 with the collapse. One of the things that my leadership did at that point is they kind of doubled down. Because they knew it was going to be a tough time, they didn't kind of carve back on this. They said, we need to understand our customers even more than we do today, because they're going through difficult times. And if we're there to help them and understand them and do things for them that are going to help them, in the end, when this is over, we'll still be partners and stronger partners for it by standing together. And I'll never forget my CEO saying that, and the importance that put on what we were trying to do, the messaging, the communications, everything we were talking to customers about. So I think you have to help your organization make a stance about what you need to do now to plan for the time when this is not going to be the case. Because again, living long enough to see the pendulum swings, and there will be a time when things, as we learned through COVID, you have to shift and you have to adapt. And I think organizations realize that they could shift and adapt a lot quicker than they thought they could. And so those learnings should go into this next phase or this year or whatever happens with just what we did in COVID, is learn, fail fast, fail forward, and bring those learnings back to your customers and be by their side as they walk through this difficult time themselves.
I love right in the middle of that, you said we need to understand our customers even more. And I think that is a bumper sticker that we probably need to get into the site of every CEO around the world, because I think that, and I think as a community, that is what we believe, is that if we can listen and we can understand and come up with solutions that are designed to please our customers, please our employees, and please our organizational's bottom lines, we can come up with sustainable long-term solutions that also work for the present. And so I think that that's really great advice. And for those that are tuning in, think about how you can articulate how your CX program can help your organization understand your customers even more, and tell those stories in addition to the outcomes of those stories, because it is both about process and about outcomes.
And design. So we talked about the design section. You have to be even more intentional when you're thinking about how you design something so that it provides the value that your customers are looking for, and helping them to measure the value of what you're doing that's going to impact their business. So that was the last little section on the design. It talks a lot about the value of design. I think we misunderstand that it seems like an activity we need to do, but we don't tie the fact that if we don't design something, we're not going to help ourselves and our customers achieve those goals. So another plug for our chapter.
Love it. Well, as usual, Diane, spending time with you has been a gift, and you shared gifts back with our program today. Thank you for being part of CXPA, and thank you for being part of CXPA Connections.
My pleasure.